Welcome to this channel of real-life inspired, quiet relationship stories. What I'm about to share is a memory fragment I've never told anyone. Tonight, let me tell you one more story I remembered, quietly, in the dark. I remember that autumn day in Yokohama with perfect clarity. The weight of office deadlines had finally become unbearable. So I called in sick that morning, my voice steady despite the lie. By the time I hung up, I was already on the train, watching the city blur past my window. I had no destination in mind, just a desperate need to escape the fluorescent lights and endless meetings that had consumed my recent weeks. The autumn air in Yokohama felt different from Tokyo, softer somehow, tinged with the scent of fallen leaves and distant ocean salt. I wandered through Chinatown first, where the lunch crowds moved with purpose I envied. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged. I stopped at a small restaurant and ordered tea, watching tourists photograph steaming dumplings while I wondered if anyone at the office had noticed my empty desk. Yamashita Park called to me next. The weekday quiet felt like a gift after months of constant noise. I found a bench facing the harbor and sat down, letting the gentle sound of waves wash over my cluttered thoughts. The weight in my chest, that familiar companion of recent months, seemed to lighten slightly in the ocean breeze. It was then that I noticed him sitting on the opposite end of the same bench. He appeared to be around my age, maybe mid-30s, with the same slightly rumpled look of someone who had made an impulsive decision that morning. His dark jacket was wrinkled, his hair slightly messy from the wind. There was something about his posture, a certain weariness, that felt familiar. When he glanced my way and offered a small, uncertain smile, I found myself nodding back. Somehow, without words, we both understood we were kindred spirits in escape. We began walking in the same direction, maintaining a comfortable distance like two people who had silently agreed to share the afternoon. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, introducing himself as David. He mentioned taking an unexpected day off work, and I admitted to the same small rebellion. There was relief in meeting someone else, who had chosen temporary freedom over responsibility. The conversation flowed as naturally as our footsteps along the waterfront path. David had an observant way of noticing details I might have missed. He pointed out how the afternoon light caught the water differently than morning sun, how the autumn leaves created patterns on the walkway that changed with each gust of wind. His perspective reminded me to slow down, to actually see the city I was walking through, rather than simply moving through it. We talked about work stress, about feeling trapped in routines that no longer fit us. As we approached the red brick warehouse district, the conversation deepened. David spoke about the pressure of meeting expectations that seemed to grow heavier each year. I shared my own struggles with finding meaning in daily tasks that felt increasingly mechanical. There was something liberating about discussing these feelings with a stranger who had no investment in my professional life, no reason to offer false reassurance or quick solutions. The afternoon stretched longer than either of us had planned. When David suggested we continue our conversation over dinner, I surprised myself by agreeing immediately. We found a quiet restaurant away from the tourist areas, where the lighting was soft and the pace unhurried. Over simple food, we continued exploring the themes of purpose, contentment, and the courage required to make meaningful changes in established lives. As evening approached, Yokohama transformed around us. The city lights began to twinkle, creating reflections on the water that seemed almost magical. David mentioned the evening view from the Cosmo World observation wheel, and without much discussion, we found ourselves walking toward the illuminated structure. The city spread below us as we rose slowly into the darkening sky, each of us lost in our own thoughts while sharing the quiet moment. The observation wheel carried us gently through the night sky, offering a perspective that made our daily concerns seem smaller, more manageable. David remained quiet for most of the ride, his expression thoughtful as he gazed out at the sprawling lights below. I found myself thinking about the unexpected gift of this day. How a simple decision to step away from routine had led to this peaceful moment suspended above the city. When we finally parted ways at the station, there was no exchange of contact information, no plans to meet again. Instead, there was a mutual understanding that this day existed as its own complete experience. David thanked me for the conversation, for helping him see Yokohama through different eyes. I thanked him for reminding me that spontaneous decisions could lead to unexpected clarity and calm. The train ride home felt different from the morning journey. I watched familiar stations pass by with a sense of perspective I hadn't possessed 12 hours earlier. The anxiety that had driven me from my desk that morning had been replaced by something quieter, more sustainable. David's presence had somehow helped me rediscover my own capacity for stillness, for appreciating moments of genuine connection, even with someone I barely knew. Returning to work the following day, I carried the memory of our conversation like a small secret source of strength. The same pressures remained, the same deadlines loomed, but I found myself approaching them with slightly more patience. During particularly stressful moments, I would remember the sound of waves at Yamashita Park, the gentle rhythm of our shared walk along the waterfront, the way David had listened without trying to fix everything. Months later, I still think about that autumn afternoon in Yokohama, not with longing or regret, but with gratitude, for the reminder that meaningful connections can emerge from the most unexpected circumstances. David showed me that sometimes the most profound conversations happen with people who exist at the edges of our lives, offering perspective precisely because they stand outside our daily concerns and obligations. That spontaneous day off became a turning point of sorts. I began taking time for myself more regularly, not as escape but as necessary maintenance for my well-being. The confidence to make that first, impulsive decision had somehow given me permission to make others. I changed jobs 6 months later, finding work that felt more aligned with the person I discovered I could be during those quiet hours in Yokohama. I never saw David again, though sometimes I catch myself looking for familiar faces when I visit Yokohama for work or pleasure. Part of me hopes our paths might cross again, while another part treasures the completeness of that single shared day. Some encounters are meant to exist as perfect moments in time, unchanged by the complications that might follow if we tried to recreate them. The memory of our conversation continues to surface during autumn months, when the air carries that same crisp promise of change. I remember the way David helped me see that taking time for reflection isn't selfish, but essential, that sometimes the most important decisions we make are the small ones that nobody else notices. That day in Yokohama taught me the value of unexpected encounters and the courage required to step outside familiar patterns. Now, when work pressure builds to overwhelming levels, I remember that afternoon and the simple truth David helped me discover. Sometimes the solution to feeling trapped isn't dramatic change, but rather the willingness to pause, breathe, and remember that we always have choices, even when they seem invisible. That quiet day in Yokohama remains one of my most treasured memories, a reminder of who I am beneath all the roles and responsibilities. Whether it truly happened, or maybe it didn't, somehow, the telling makes that less important. If even a small part of this story stays with you, then I'm glad I chose to share it. If you feel like it, I'd be happy to have you back for another story, and if you enjoyed this quiet moment, please consider subscribing. Until next time, another quiet night.